I'm a philosopher. My first training was neurology. I practiced neurology before the revolution, after, but I practiced philosophy in the dissident movement. After the change, I was allowed to devote myself to philosophy totally. So I graduated philosophy and I teach bioethics on the medical faculty, which is a combination of both. Therefore, I must start from the philosophical point of view. And the first point is, the first idea is that, no, there's some mistake. No, there's, yeah. Two postulates, first of all. I will not go back to the foundations of these postulates. It could be, but I would spend too much time. When I prepared my presentation, I must have cut off many points from the presentation. So only the postulates could get discussed, but I can argue on behalf of it, but it's not possible. So the first is that the traditional concept of truth. The traditional concept of truth is that it is based on adequatio, medieval concept and ordinary concept of truth is it doesn't fit reality. It is not true because reality is different. And philosophically, philosophers usually speak about it this way. I think some philosophers make a turnover. It is either say a Copernican turnover that let's try to reverse it. Let's try to reverse it and to speak about that reality is defined by truth. So we have a direct approach to truth, and when we consider something, be it statement, be it an image of something, when we call it truth, the reality appears. So I think it's very important also in the context of speaking about the Gospels and so on. It's important to be involved in the truth. Of course, it requires responsibility. It is not that easy. Yeah? Good examples come from medicine, from psychiatry. But patients suffering from schizophrenia have delusions. They consider something real, it is not real, but they're convinced about reality. So it is the case. Of course, it's false. And very likely, usually, they are not able to bear the consequences of this. They are not responsible enough. But anyway, it is the case. So, but it is also the case I mentioned the situation before the revolution. Some people, many people, the majority of the society were convinced about the communist idea, more or less. A few people were convinced about something different. And these people, these dissidents, were able to stand up their position, and later on they won. So historically, sometimes minority pursues some notion of truth, and then this group wins. Their truth reveals truth. So what does it mean? This turnover has the main consequence. We must start to think in non-reifiable concepts. What is non-reifiable? The term is, I'm not certain about it, but I think the first person who coined this term was Martin Heidegger, Ungegenständlich. But what does it mean, Ungegenständlich? It means that we speak about something that we cannot put in front of us. And why? Simply because we are part of it. So whenever we are part of something, for Heidegger it was being, we cannot speak about being in front of us. It's impossible. But there are many things like this. So non-reifiable concept is very important. Unfortunately, it was not worked out by the Greek philosophers. They have no concept of the self. The self is an achievement of many centuries in philosophy, and still I think it is not finished. Some philosophers speak about I, but they say I, but they mean he or she or it. Yes. So to start the concept of self is not that easy. So it means that both subjective and objective aspects are put together. It's a sharp difference from sciences, because sciences must be objective. So there's a clash between this existential approach and the scientific approach. We should be aware of it for the future, for the next, what I will speak about. So involvement, responsibility, and fidelity plays a very important. It resembles the Old and New Testament, because I dare say that the Old Testament is based on this notion, that the truth is important, and reality is derived from the truth. Of course, they don't speak that often about truth. Emet, Emunah is also the truth. But the Old Testament speaks about the God. And faithfulness to God is something like this, like the faithfulness to the truth. Yes. So I think this is the possible approach how to understand the Old Testament as well as New Testament. Yes. We should be faithful. Well, the second statement is that the human being, again, I cannot give you all the arguments, the human being is motivated by a value, which is the goal. Everyone, unless we are psychiatrically ill, in this case we may have different goals, but basically a healthy person has one goal. It is the good for the person, and we call this good the meaning of life. So all of us pursue the meaning of life. We are usually not able to explain, to render what is the meaning of life. It has good reason, because it is non-verifiable. So we cannot know what the meaning of life is. Anyway, we pursue the meaning of life. Everyone, moreover, the meaning of life is individual, it's concrete, it's unique. And moreover, the second point from this postulate is that the utmost, not idea, the utmost value we pursue is open to us only through the question. So we pursue the question. It is our motive. Always only question. It is a misunderstanding to think that we pursue a statement, a vision. No, we pursue a question. Even in the case we have a vision of something, still it is because it is an answer to the question. So we pursue questions. Unless we pursue questions, we are not motivated. When everything is solved, when there is no question, it's boredom, it's tedious, it's senseless for us. We are seeking answers to some questions. So these two postulates must be in advance mentioned. So it is through the question. When speaking about the memory, of course the conference is on memory. We distinguish, in medicine, distinguish implicit and explicit memory. Implicit memory is concerns. Gottlob Frege proposed that every word has a reference, Bedeutung, and sense, Sinn, yes, every term. We use the example of the star. Evening star and morning star are the same star. It is a fake because it is not a star actually, it's a planet. So it's not true. But the term true is important, because the words can never be true. There is no relation to truth of the words. So all the words we know have nothing to do with the truth. The only way how we can grasp truth is through sentences. So therefore, I think it is a mistake of Frege. We can speak about references with regard to words, all the words. We memorize words. Yes? So it is an implicit memory, how we learn some words. And the explicit words have a meaning, and the meaning has a chance to be true or untrue. So the truth is related only to sentences. about or distinguish real and real. Real means related to reality as it is. Real means intentional object of it. There are some letters. You asked me to speak about the brain, but I think it would be too broad, you know. So sentences, I said, but sentences can be and are coupled together and make narratives. And the entire culture is composed of narratives. We narrate everything. Mathematics must be narrated. Unless mathematics is narrated, it's not can be comprehensible. It must be narrated. So everything is narrated, but the closest object of narration is the story, traditionally. So people started, their culture started by narrating stories. So of course, because narratives are composed of, there's a chain of sentences, also narratives have something to do with the truth. I remind you what I said about the truth, yes? Meaning, so we have, the sentence may have a meaning, and meaning may have two different forms. Richard Mervyn Hare, the British philosopher, distinguished descriptive and prescriptive meaning. Of course, it concerns sentences, so they have some structure. I will not speak about structuralism. And the prescriptive meaning is a sentiment. So, Richard Mervyn Hare proposes examples how we add some emotion to every sentence. Yes? Even when they seem to be descriptive only, we add some prescriptive moment. And use the example that strawberries are sweet. Yes? It seems to be a descriptive, but actually we consider it a prescriptive. Yes? It has a value. So there are the meanings, and of course it concerns also narratives. The meaning of a narrative, of course the narratives must have a meaning, otherwise it is not a narrative, it is useless for us. It must have a meaning. The story must have a meaning. Therefore we read books, we read novels, we watch films, because we require a meaning that should come from. And in some cases there can be a meaning that is the meaning of life of someone. And I admire to buy films or books that express the meaning of life of someone. So it is the meaning of life, and of course the meaning of life, Max Scherer said there is a correlation between the value and the emotion. And of course also the value, the meaning of life must be accompanied by emotion, and Martin Heidegger called this emotion Stimmung. That's the mood, yes? The mood in the background of everything. Therefore it is not verifiable because we are part, our mental activity is always part of this mood. So we cannot put it in front of us. So the story has a meaning. Sometimes the story has a meaning of life of someone. It can be shallower or it can be deeper. The shallower meaning is always a group. Of course, group people may share the same meaning of life. Something of their meaning of life is shared by other people. But in the last, it must be individual. The deepest meaning of life of someone is the individual. Everyone, all of us are individuals. We have our personal meaning of life. Sometimes it's close to the meaning of life of someone else. Then we get married, for example, because the meaning of life is compatible with each other. We make a political party or the church or something like this. But basically we are individuals. It could be another postulate that we are individuals. And this meaning of life is, of course, what we pursue. So it is in the future. So we have the future in front of us. Actually, we dwell in the future, and it is our life. All our thinking is about the future. Of course, we use the past. Of course, we have the history. We have the memories. But in which sense we use these memories is the only way how we use them for some future activity. Yes. And it is valid, I'm sure it's valid also about the Gospels, for example. We need something from the Gospels for the future. It's useful for us. For many people, of course, Jesus Christ, his crucifixion is meaningful for many people, of course, yes? For their future, how to behave. So the future is important. We have two kinds, and this is something, it's a contribution. We should distinguish two kinds of future. It is not one future. Actually, we have in front of us, we have a quasi-future and a genuine future. And it is totally different. It is confused, but it's totally different. So what is the quasi-future? Quasi-future is awaiting of what can be awaited. For example, tomorrow is Saturday, but it is not actually it's not future, because it is derived from repetition of Saturdays every 7 days for thousands of years. So the future of tomorrow's Saturday has been determined thousands of years ago, culturally. Or physically, tomorrow will be again sunrise and sunset, and because it's every day, so we can expect it. But it is no future. It is the way how we look forward to something. Yes? We expect it. It will be. Yes? So, but it is a fake future. It is not real. It is with some probability. Actually, the future is crumbling away. We want to preserve it because it's destroyed. Everything is decaying. So we want to preserve it. Yes? Archaeologists or maybe biblical experts, biblical scholars want to preserve everything what was in the past. So, but we rely on the fake future. It's not the future, the true future. The genuine future is different. The genuine future is paradoxical. It's crazy, actually. It means that we cannot expect, but we also cannot not expect. We must do both. So we must expect amazement. We must await amazement. So it is totally different. We can recall a theory that is common in physics, which is chaos. We have two kinds of chaos. We have the so-called stochastic chaos with the probabilities. Of course, it's decaying all the time. But there is also an organized chaos or deterministic chaos. And this deterministic chaos produces something new. The life is based on this organized chaos. Yes? So it organizes something new in us. I call it dead chaos and lively chaos. Yes, I think it's very typical. Until we live, we live with the organized chaos. In the moment of death, we will go through the process of the dead chaos. Yes. So old and new, this category seems to me also very important. So quasi-future is based on certainty. We wish certainty. We rely on certainty. We have insurances. Everything is insured, and we expect that everything will be the same, and health insurance, and everything should be insured. Whereas the true future is accompanied by anxiety, maybe by fear. Requires courage, and is very important because it is the only way how we can respect the human dignity. Because the other human beings are free. What does it mean? They are unpredictable. And because they are unpredictable, the only way how to live with the other is to expect unexpected, what cannot be expected, to expect a surprise. So this is the quasi-future. So quasi-future requires from us adaptiveness. We must adapt to the situation how it is, and we adjust our habits to the habits of other people, and we live in the society, we learn the language, and we belong to the community. So it is adaptiveness. Whereas the genuine future requires something that is called adaptability. Again, as I promised to mention neurology. In neurology, we know the part of the brain a huge part of the brain, which is called the frontal lobes. And these frontal lobes are the organ of adaptability. The human beings, of course, other animals have frontal lobes, but the human frontal lobes are the biggest ones and most intricate. We know nothing more intricate but the frontal lobes. So we are adaptable, and the better working frontal lobes you have, the more adaptable we are. The adaptiveness concerns the local history, the local tradition. Everyone is embedded in the tradition. Whereas the question, the adaptability, is open, is general, and is related to question, not the tradition, but the question. So people who are adaptable are ready to raise questions. To raise questions, to live with questions is not very comfortable. It's stressing always. Yes. So therefore people dislike questions, mostly. So philosophers who raise questions about something are pretty good at. Socrates, for example, yes. It's dangerous to raise questions. We can distinguish answerable and non-answerable questions. Unanswerable questions are those that can be answered in some time. And there are many people who pursue some questions, scientists, for example, and they find some answer, and they become content with it, they get the Nobel Prize, they are celebrity and many lectures. But there are also questions that cannot be answered. And they are called, in philosophy, they are called paradoxes. And there are people who pursue paradoxes. And this is very difficult. To know that the answer can never be reached, and still we are to pursue it. So the meaning is when we create our meaning, we pursue a question, and we always attempt to give the meaning to the past events. We are embedded in the sense we are part of the tradition. We have our individual tradition. We are born with some dispositions. Maybe we make a mistake in our life, we become a handicap, and we want to give some meaning to it. So the meaning is in front of us, but relates to our life. We create our life all the time. So the future of us is a mixture of the past that is projected into the future, and the question we pursue. And this is what we should be aware of, that it is always integrated. So the meaning of life is something between. To judge about the meaning of life of someone means to guess the proportion between the Q future and G future. Some people have a very tiny G future, and it's very difficult to understand them because they have only their local tradition, so then people don't understand each other. Those who pursue the G future, they are open, they have questions, and they are ready to skepticism, for example, criticize them. Of course, that's interesting. So they are open. So these two futures are always present in everything we do. And so this is what we can grasp, the question of someone, the last utmost question he or she pursues, and it is exactly what Robin Collingwood proposes. To understand the past, to history, means to understand the question people pursued when they acted in this or that way. So for historians, they have answers, and they are seeking questions. So the question is very important for understanding of the history. And according to this question, we can arrange the story, the biography of the concrete historical persons. It depends on how we grasp the question. How to grasp the question? Again, I refer to Adam Smith, who wrote a book, The Theory of Moral Sentiments, where he describes, he called it sympathy, but actually it's empathy. And empathy is the disposition to grasp what someone pursues. It was a hypothesis of Adam Smith 200 years ago, but nowadays, 20 years ago, it has been proved that it is possible, it's real. We have the so-called mirror neurons, or I call it mimetic neurons, which allows us to grasp the meaning, the emotion of someone else, and the intention of someone else. So we can directly understand the other. But it is proved because, for example, suffering of someone arouses activity, brain activity in the same regions in my brain if I have these mirror neurons. So it is the disposition to understand the other. Yes, we can understand because we see someone, but we can read about someone and still arouse these neurons. Certainly, you know films in which people drop their tears. Yes, Aristotle spoke about catharsis, emotional involvement of someone in the story. So we can participate. In emotion of someone else. Of course, there is the possibility to project our notion, or better, the authentic approach is to grasp the authentic question of someone else, not our question, but the question of someone who did something in the history. And this question, when we grasp it, is a criterion according to which we can select something from the memories as we spoke about. So we can choose the memories, not everything. It is the question, which words of Jesus, for example, or acts of Jesus, are true and which are authentic or non-authentic. We can choose it not as Jesus Seminar did it by voting, no, according to some criteria. And the question is the criteria. So when we do it, of course, we add something to reality, to the history. We create it anew, but it is in accord with the Gadamer's notion of hermeneutics. To reproduce something means to produce something. We do it always. The it's unavoidable. We always add something, more or less. So it is the process of hermeneutics. Otherwise, we cannot do it. So we reconstruct and we construct the story of Jesus. We must do it according to our or my understanding of the question of Jesus. So we are very close to Jesus. I speak Shakespeare. Well, one remark seems to be very important. Nowadays, people in Europe are split. Not only in the United States, split. They don't understand each other. People adhere to their own traditions, and they are not enough open to new things that come from the technological development and so on. So people are scared by other people. They cannot communicate. They cannot understand, because unless we grasp the question of the other, we cannot understand him or her. So it's essential for the contemporary approach. Yeah? So people are alienated now. So I can summarize it as a hermeneutic circle. The hermeneutic circle is from the question to the narrative of someone, and from the narrative back to the question. This is the process. It is never finished. Or, in other words, from gist to tale and from tale to gist. So which might be the questions? There are the paradoxical question or unanswerable questions. For example, Immanuel Kant, famous, was Kant and so on. Gnostic questions, where do I come from and where do I go to and so on. There are philosophical questions, what is the truth, what is the good, whence evil, patience in the words ask, why just me? So there are the questions that can be hardly answered. And now I think we can approach Jesus' quest historically. So we presume that Jesus was the same person who didn't suffer from psychiatric disease, so he didn't suffer from dissociation, that he would have different selves. This is my presumption. Maybe someone would say, yeah, he was crazy. No, for me, he was not crazy. So he can reconstruct, I dare say, we must reconstruct his story. Of course, we must grasp the meaning of why he pursued. In that time, the pure future was usually rendered in apocalyptic terms, in decay and so on, whereas the G future was eschatological. So eschatology means it is just expectation of a surprise, certainly. That's eschatology. I dare say it's identity. Well, so the proportion in Jesus, according to my opinion, is in favor of G future. He is very open. He was very adaptable. He lived with the question. And this seems to me very important. Unless Jesus lived with the question, he was not a human. And it would be a dogmatism. Unless he shared some question he pursued, he was useless for me. He would be something like a robot. I don't need a robot for my salvation. It's useless. Robot. We have many robots around us. I don't want to be rescued by a robot. Yes, I need a true human being. Whether he was also a god, I leave it to theologians. They have some notion of understanding whether he was a god or not. For me, it's important that he was a human being, yes? A true human being. So it is not. So the understanding must be existential, of course, and there is a question about, I think he spoke about the good life. The good life in the Greek, classic Greek tradition was eudaimonia. But eudaimonia was a synonym of makaria. It was the same. Jesus speaks about makarios are those. He formulated it very sharply. Makarios are those who suffer, those who and so on, or alone. So it was a very sharp formulation of makaria. He was thinking about how to live a good life. Yes, certainly. And either formulated his question, which I don't know whether he raised it actually on the cross, but this statement that you have forsaken me, God, you have forsaken me, certainly summarizes his question. So he was very existential. His theology was very existential. It wasn't a theory, it was an academic theory. He was not a robot, as I said. Yeah? He was a true living human being. This question is very universal. We can find it in the book of Job. We can find it in the Persian tradition, in Sumerian, Egyptian tradition, anywhere. In Sumer, there is famous Job of Sumer, yes, who has the same claim. So we can summarize it that Jesus pursued the problem of theodicy. That the God is almighty, the God is good, and evil does exist. And such a notion of Jesus is useful for us, for example, in Holocaust. Otherwise, it's useless. No, Jesus, who suffered, was tormented by this question, can say something to those who suffered in the concentration camps. The question can be formulated also in the opposite way. Philosophically, it's interesting. God is almighty and evil. Good does happen. How is it possible that good does happen? So I think that's all. This is just summarizing what I've said. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to go back to this slide and the comment you made about meaning of life being shallow or deep, the shallow being collective, the deeper being the individual. I don't know how important it is to your overall thesis or your overall sense of like where that point fits necessarily in the overall spectrum of your presentation, but it struck me as very Western. And that, especially you said, that the individual sense of meaning is a much more deep and significant one. And I mean, anthropologically, we are a highly individualistic culture. That was a highly individualistic statement, but in a collectivistic culture. culture, which both exists currently, but biblical period was collectivistic. And in that setting, one's individual meaning of life is actually given, assigned to that person by the collective. There is no difference. So I'm wondering what that does, what a collectivistic culture would do to the impression that individual meaning is deeper than collective.
I discussed it also with some professor of sociology, Joseph Drew from the United States, and he proposed that the history is a process from collectivistic or collective approach to the individualistic approach. So according to this, we can differ the cultures. Yes. If we look in the history of Europe, we can see it quite well. Yes. The Old Testament, only Ezekiel speaks about individuals. The blood from your crimes will be dropped on your head. I don't quote it properly, but it's only Ezekiel. It's much at the end of the history of the Old Testament. Yes. In Europe, yes, collectives. There are collectives always, and the more developed we are, the more individualistic we are. Of course, there are backward movements. For example, communism. Yes, it's an attempt to go back because people are scared by being individuals. Yes. Or Nazism in Germany. Again, it was a way back, attempt to go back, to go back. But generally, I see, this is my vision. I'm sorry for it. It's my approach. But I think that the history goes from the collective to the individual. Also, in the third world, also we can observe there individualization. But also in psychiatry, we can observe the same. Carl Gustav Jung speaks about individuation. Yes. The older we are, the more individual we become. So I think it is a trend in the history. Here I'm critical about Karl Popper, who says there are no laws in the history. I think there is a law from the collective to the individual. It's a law in the history. Not only human history, it's also in the nature. Individualization occurs also in the nature.
Thank you.
Yes, question of clarification, but thank you for your simulated talk. It was fascinating. And it just simply relates to your title, whereas if you had said to understand the past is to understand how past ones approach their present, that would make sense to me. I'm just wondering why you say future, unless you see their future as embedding their hopes, their values. So, like I say, it would make more sense to me to see that is how the past ones approach their present, how they remembered their present.
How do you remember the present? So this is the question.
Well, yeah, how they recorded their present.
Yeah.
Which is for us the past.
Yeah. I dare say that they select. There is a broad array of memories, of events. And we choose something. They chose something from the platitude of events, of phenomena, and they chose something because they had some meaning of life. They pursued something. So this is what we do all the time. We forget many things. We forget it because they are useless for us. It will be economical to remember something that is useless. So we forget it. So we pick out individual pieces of our experience. Actually, it's very difficult. Only writers can do it. For example, to remember the history. Someone spoke about it yesterday. It's a mixture of thoughts, of memories. We can organize them. So we organize the memories generally for ourselves
But also when we want to understand someone, we must organize the individual pieces. So, for example, to grasp the life of Jesus means to grasp his utmost question, and then we find what fits to this question and what doesn't fit. And this is what also the first writers of Gospels did. They selected something. Now we are in a different situation. Maybe we may understand this question differently. So we can choose something and we can say, no, it doesn't go, it's additional. It is the theory of form critique, yes? They also do something like this. They say this is additional. These statements are additional, but these are original because they fit with or to something. To something, how we grasp the idea of Jesus. So the question is, what was the basic question? I think it was very profound. So what was the basic question of Jesus? To your question, I think it doesn't occur that people smoothly would become individuals. It is so that single people become individuals and then other people become individuals and more and more and more. Yeah? So it is not a direct process of being individuals. Some people remain collective, meaning they prefer rowdies, football rowdies. Yes, they belong to the collective. They are not individuals. And they feel happy to be a part in a sect, for example. They are happy to be a part of the sect. So, but some people become individuals. I teach ethics. I just said it is not only the fact, it is also something that ought to be. We should become individuals, at least according to Carl Gustav Jung.
I have a question. If we're moving, if I understand you correctly, we're moving towards individuality, then conceptions of afterlife in the ancient world are derived within communal contexts. What does that say in your estimation about current conceptions of afterlife? And how might you think about them?
That's a tough question. I would answer by what I said. We are to, as Socrates did it, we read it in Plato, we should expect a surprise. Surprise, yes. We should expect a surprise. That's the true approach to our life. Yes.
I have come here, I'm getting older, and I want to know what's going to happen. But it will be a surprise. But an individualistic surprise. Quite different from community.
Yes. Yes.
It will be responsible.
We are in the death, we are communities.
To use my time. One more, David. You
I always wonder how can you be useful for interpretation of resurrection as the core of the Christian faith. Well, the Christians got the experience with the present Jesus or active Jesus and decided one part of them, since there are various interpretations of this experience, but the later mainstream experience was to apply to the experience the scheme well known already from the apocalyptic writings, namely that the resurrection of Jesus, this experience is the resurrection which guarantees the resurrection of the other people in the future. This is future question of the meaning of human life, isn't
it? Of course, we can think about, nowadays many people speak about apocalypse. Nowadays. Everything is destroying, getting worse, and we can expect only something bad. therefore people are in favor of this approach, apocalyptic. What they can read in the Gospels. It was in the time of the Roman Empire as well. Yes. But I think it was a false understanding of Jesus, because it was eschatological person. Eschatology means the present eschatology. It's not some future eschatology. No, right now. Expect a surprise right now. Anytime, any moment. Be open. Leave everything. Have nothing. Follow me. Do not have nothing. That's the right way of life.
This is the basis. And the second step was that some of them now decided to apply the apocalypse.
Yes. It was their understanding. It was the end of it. I said we have Q future, G future. Those who pursue mostly the Q future are apocalyptic. They're in their attitude. Whereas those who pursue the G future, they are eschatological. Of course, things are changing also nowadays, as it was in the time. But let's be eschatological.
Yes.
Let's read questions. Yes.
Yes.
That's it.
Future.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't sure. I'm just thinking out loud about what you said. That I'm just trying to put it even on a more basic level for me. And from what I got from what you said, I got that it might be that our understanding of anything else always leads us back to our implicit motivations, our implicit questions, our implicit motives. Why are we interested, for example, in reconstructing history for Jesus, right? And these questions, these motives, this implicit, like the reason why we are doing it is something like very true about being, the self-awareness. We are already because we study, we are already self-aware that understanding tells us a lot about ourselves, our questions, our interests. And from what you said, I somehow got the idea, well, that this might be also a function, an assumption. I mean, it is obviously a function, assumption in our studying ancient sources. When I questioned, for example, what Matthew wanted to say by his gospel, is to be somehow aware that he had also implicit questions, implicit motivations, implicit stuff, which has driven his whatever he wanted to do. It was this was the almost existential need which is behind, and it's a part of what we are trying to do.
But I think for biblical studies it would be interesting to compare the question the author of Matthew Gospel had pursued and Jesus pursued. What's the combination between these questions? Yes. Did they meet, or were they totally different? Did anyone grasp the true question of Jesus? Of course, it's always tentative approach. Yes, of course, hermeneutics is tentative. The Schreiber describes his hermeneutic circle. It's tentative always. We start with one word and then we construct the sentences. Just the hermeneutic circle. Otherwise, we cannot do it. So it's tentative. We have some assumption what Matthew proposed or Matthew pursued and what Jesus pursued, and maybe later on there very likely were several reductions of Matthew. So it is not, we don't have the original Matthew Gospel. So it's I think it can be theologically it can be used this approach. Yes, and it is the true hermeneutic approach. Collingwood is quoted by Gadamer. So Speculum and this autobiography, two books in which he speaks about the questions. It's interesting.
Okay, I think we're going to end it there. Thank you very much.